Education to prevent loss of control. What we mean by loss of control here is your patient losing their control of their breathing to a point where there's a release of adrenaline. The patient would become anxious, have an increased heart rate, and take longer to recover from this. A key point of managing patients with chronic respiratory conditions is talking to them. We need to educate them about their condition and help them to manage it. It's a collaborative approach and requires you to listen to your patient and hear what works for them. Education includes breathing techniques and lifestyle modifications. Blow as you go. Blow as you go. The theory is breathing out on the hardest part of a movement keeps the breath smooth and prevents the patient from breath holding. For example, just now, if you were to bend down as if you were going to tie your shoes, however, as you're doing so, hold your breath throughout this movement. Note how you feel. Now repeat it. Breathe, however, throughout this movement. Note how you feel. Now repeat it. Breathe, however, this time, breathe out as you bend down, then take a breath in and breathe out as you come back up. Do you notice the difference in how you feel? This is the theory with blow as you go. Breathe in before you make the effort and breathe out while you're making the effort. So for example, breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. Breathe in and out.
Blow as you go can be used to accompany any activity with increased effort. So for example, lifting things into cupboards, climbing the stairs, picking items up off the floor, or tying your shoelace. Let's have a look at what the stairs might look like.
With the stairs, the effort is putting the foot down and stepping through it. So the patient should take a breath in on the step and then out as they're stepping up. So in and breathe out. Blow as you go is supported by low-grade evidence. It's also a good practice point to discourage breath holding. Energy conservation is a very important topic which is covered as part of pulmonary rehabilitation. In chronic lung disease, the body is no longer efficient at meeting the body's demand for oxygen. This means doing basic tasks over the day can result in increased work of breathing and general fatigue. When the body receives less oxygen, the energy supplies become limited. This causes fatigue, shortness of breath, and can also lead to possible anxiety or panic attacks with the simplest of activities. Teaching your patient energy conservation allows the patient to be able to form the daily tasks in a more efficient manner and helps to prevent them losing control of their breathing. You can suggest these breathing techniques and energy conservation techniques to your patients. However, it's obviously up to them whether or not any of them will be of any use.
The basics of energy conservation are to control and coordinate breathing with activities, reduce strenuous movements, sit where possible to perform activities, take frequent breaks, and plan and prepare your day. Coordinated breathing activity decreases energy expenditure and prevents breath holding. It is fundamentally similar to blow as you go. You ask them to breathe in before they start the activity and breathe out as they complete it. This can be done during activities such as sit to stand, so breathing in and out as you stand, and any activity which involves overhead movement, so putting things into a cupboard, so breathing in and out. And activities such as lifting, so take a breath in before you start the activity, breathe out as you bend down, and then as you're coming back up again, take a breath in and breathe out as you come up. We want to reduce any activity which adds a load on the muscles. OTs can provide your patients a lot of support in this area, providing them with adaptive equipment and advice about how to adapt their ADLs. Types of OT equipment may include a perching stool, a helping hand to reach objects which are high up in cupboards, and even something like a kettle tipper, as the act of using a kettle actually uses a lot of energy. We can give them such advice such as buying pre-prepared vegetables rather than spending the time chopping them themselves. However, do be aware of the financial implications of this. A bag of onions would cost over £1 as compared to the individual onion, which might only cost 10 pence. It can be worth discussing with your patient about reorganising their kitchen and where they keep their everyday utensils. If you look here, the amount of time it takes to move around the room to collect a few plates and a cup. However, there's probably a better option for this. So consider suggesting to your patients to keep all these utensils together in the one place on the worktop. Another daily task that requires a lot of energy is using a towel after a bath or a shower. Instead of using a towel, you can suggest using a toweling dressing gown to your patients. Another way to lighten the load on your patients is that you could discuss that the patient wants to share the load of their housework. This can be with family, their partner, or external support. This may seem like an easy win, however, it can change household dynamics considerably. Patient may be very resistant to this as they may wish to retain their independence. Something else we wish to consider is the load in which patients are carrying. So this can be things like what they're carrying in baskets and how far they fill the kettle. Ask your patients to consider carrying less, or can they split the journey up over a few times a day. So with carrying laundry up the stairs, do it in fewer smaller loads over the day. With things like the kettle, only fill it with as much water as they need, as this will be less load on the patient. Standing uses considerably more energy than sitting. Try to decrease standing activities. For example, sit while doing the ironing. And consider a referral to OT for things like a perching stool or a shower chair. This would allow your patients to sit while showering, chopping vegetables, doing hair and makeup, and ironing. Pushing into breathlessness may take longer for your patient to recover, so it's important to take regular breaks and to allow them to recover. We can use the Borg scale to help educate our patients with that. You don't want them to get to the point where they can't say more than 1 or 2 words, so equivalent to a 3 or 4 on the scale. At this point, they should stop and recover using techniques such as breathing control to help them to regain control of their breathing. When out walking, you can suggest that the patient stops and gets into one of the positions that will help ease their breathlessness. They can then practice breathing control. If they're anxious about this, they may think that people are looking at them. You may suggest that they want to look in a shop window, look at a mobile phone, or for ladies, they can look in their handbag. We are trying to break the cycle of anxiety and breathlessness. If we can get the patients to stay in control of their breathing, they are less likely to have the physical changes like chest tightening and increased heart rate. This means your patients will be able to do a lot more and it won't take them as long to recover. Plan and prepare means challenging your patient about what needs to be done and when. Your patient's expectation can lead to frustration, so they need to be able to set achievable goals. Challenge their old habits and get them to ask themselves, is it essential that this task is performed in the usual way? They should plan for their rest breaks and interruptions, so planning that things should take longer. Break jobs into smaller steps and prepare and prioritise. Use a diary to help plan daily, weekly and monthly tasks. Put items where they can be easily found. As I said before, this could be something as simple as keeping all of their plates on the work surface. Timing of activities is also important. Is it possible for them to split up the larger tasks such as hoovering? So do they need to hoover the whole house on a Monday, or can they hoover a room per day, or even better, can they delegate that to somebody else? As you can see with energy conservation, it's basically a series of hints and tips. Your patients can decide what works for them and they will have their own way of working things. In pulmonary rehabilitation, delivering this education session was always one of my most enjoyable, as the patients would always share hints and tips with each other.
The guidelines highlight that we should be teaching our patient individualised energy conservation techniques. This highlights the conversation you should be having with your patient and discussing what might or might not work for them. Pacing is another part of energy conservation, and again is something that can be done on its own. With pacing, we're trying to keep the patient in control of their breathing so they don't end up losing control and having that release of adrenaline. Tips include advising your patient not to hold their breath during tasks, to carry their tasks out more slowly, to sync their breaths to steps when walking, and to take regular breaks when walking on varying terrain such as hills and stairs. So what do we say to our patients? The patient is instructed to inhale and exhale in a time with their steps in a rhythm that suits them. So it could be that you want the patient to breathe in for 2 steps and out for 3 steps. The aim is that this will reduce dyspnea during activity. So for example, when climbing the stairs or for walking on an incline. It will also help them to avoid rushing as they should be focusing on their breathing. This also discourages breath holding or breathing rapid and shallow. Evidence supports the use of pacing to be taught to these patients with COPD to maintain control of their breathing. It is used in combination with other techniques and it requires further research.